All you're gonna hear is the Hasselblad click, the little Dane sound, yeah. No way, dude. They took the sign down. There's a sign that was on top of this. It's not there. That's crazy. I was like, why does this comp look different? It's like iconic. Okay, well, I guess I'll take a picture of it. That's the whole point why we're here. My name is Steele, and I'm a photographer based in New Jersey. I started photography because I really was scared of losing memories. I felt that when I was going through high school and even through middle school, just starting to look back on old memories, they were just fading. And a lot of the times, if I didn't have any photos from those time periods, then the memories could just completely go away. It wasn't until I went on this hike to the top of Mount Marcy, which is the tallest point in New York. Yeah, it was when I was just starting college. So right after I got out of high school, I went on this big hike, and I got to the top of the mountain. It was pouring rain the whole time. And when I got to the top, I didn't really know much about hikes, 'cause up until that point, I didn't do much in high school. I didn't travel much, didn't explore too much. And when I got to the top, it was just completely fogged out. And I didn't even know that was an option. But yeah, when you get that high up, you can just be inside of a cloud. And I thought that all of that pain and suffering on the way up, it was a good six or so mile hike, that we would get a good reward right away. And we just got nothing. I remember just sitting and standing just at the side of the mountain in defeat, like, wow, there's no view. This is really it. We're just gonna go down. And there was only like a 10 to 30 second window where the clouds actually did break, and I got to just take in the view. And that view made that long, enduring process feel worth it for that moment. And we went down, completed the hike, and it wasn't until we even got completely home from the trip that my brother showed me that he actually had captured a photo of me from that hike. And it was just that 10 to 30 second moment. And it was just such a brief time that if he wasn't looking over my way and he didn't see that the view also parted, that he wouldn't have even got a photo of me there to begin with. But that was when I realized that photography can truly capture moments forever and preserve memories at the same time. And that photo still just means a lot to me, and it really made me want to capture that moment. My freshman year, I didn't have photography really at all. I was introduced to it around spring break, where I was introduced to photography. That was around the time of the hike. At that time, I was just working really hard. I had a full ride scholarship to my college, and to me, I never want to let anyone down. So because I was getting my college paid for me, I wanted to just work 100% effort into my degree, which was computer science. Through that, I definitely burnt out just trying to do all that work, and I needed some outlet, and my advisor for my major said maybe I should pick up a hobby, and he coincidentally was also into photography. He let me use his camera. At the time, it was like a Sony A7, like the first original one. Used it, loved it. And I ended up doing just a lot of research into cameras in my free time, got really interested in gears, watching videos of other people reviewing gear, taking gear out. I ended up getting my first job at the college to just help out with, other purchases that I would need that was outside of my scholarship. I ended up taking all the money that I got, and I bought my first camera. It was a Canon 80D with a kit lens. Basically just every moment that I had free time in college, I took it out. And they were bad photos. It was just macro photos. They were just photos of the normal buildings. They're really bad photos. Into my sophomore year, I was a lot more interested in it, started talking to people that were also interested in photography at my school. And then I actually was pretty quick in finishing my computer science degree, to the point where I could have finished it in 3 years, but I ended up staying for 4 years, and my whole fourth year I basically just took photography related classes and minored in photography. So since I had that full ride scholarship, I just took an extra year and got a photography minor, which really got me interested in it more. I feel like Florida and the Jersey Shore actually have pretty similar compositions in terms of hotels that get abandoned. This one's cool. I never really liked other people's art in my work, like the murals, but I'm making quick work of all these scenes, because you don't know if these places are operational or not. And sometimes if you spend too long at it, people come out and ask you questions, which is not the biggest deal ever, but it kind of takes the rhythm and flow out of it. So I like to just shoot as fast as possible and get a comp that I like and then move on. This is cool. I mean, really all I'm doing is focusing on colors, composition, lines. That's basically it. It's pretty simple work. I'm big on focus and recomposing. A lot of people like to move their focus point around, but I just keep it in the center, focus, recompose. I feel like it works best for me, and that's kind of how it works with like a film camera, like a rangefinder. Right. Like if you're using a Leica, you have to, a big issue is a lot of people, like they focus right in the middle and they never recompose. So if you look at some people who shoot like a rangefinder, all their photos, like focus point is right in the middle. You go through their whole portfolio, it's just right in the middle. You just have to recompose to get some variety in the shots. So it's just gonna look dumb. I'm always gonna like focus like right on something, you're just gonna see me like just move, at the last second. It's a hoodie. I thought the same thing. I was like freaking out for a second. I was like, yo, they are squaring up right now. They're puffing their chests out. I don't really have a set amount of like compositions that I'm gonna get on one thing. Like I don't try to hit it from like front, sides, and whatever. It's just whatever the angle is. Sometimes I take a lot of the same one, and sometimes I feel like only one photo works. This one has a lot because the light's really good. Yeah, it's actually quite perfect light because without any editing, you have contrast in the scene, which you don't always get. This is perfect though. Light's good, composition's good. It is a ghost town. There's already been, like, we only went to one location and there's been a ton of change already in terms of like some places renovating and getting better, some places maybe completely rebranding. Last year this time, So it gave it a whole year of humans coming in, messing with it, destroying things, and then came back, and this is what we got now. And it wasn't until I had worked a couple of years in computer science where I realized that I could just do my passions now. As you know, I was working in computer science and still going out and doing photography, but it was only on the weekends. And the weekends was a tough time to photograph because it's so busy with people around. I wanted to be able to take in a location by myself and be present in the space. I was really not creative in the beginning, and I was really taking some bad photos in the beginning. And there were some tutorials and accounts that I was following that were telling me how to be like almost the most pure photographer, which at my time, which was a very analytical, mathematical mind, stuff like that made sense. Like get the sharpest lens, correct your angles, just get a correct white balance, correct settings in your camera. All of those things made a lot of sense to me, and I was just kind of feeded into this bias of what a photo should be. And because of that, I was just making these traditional photos that were bad. And I could look at my own photos and understand that I was doing everything right, but never enjoying the work that I was creating. And I just wondered why. And I eventually realized it was just because I wasn't breaking any rules. I wasn't trying anything different. So I just got on my laptop, took out photos that I thought were some of my best, and really just played around with the colors, the compositions, and really was able to look at my photos in a different light, different color scheme, and enjoy them more because they just weren't perfect anymore. And the world that I was capturing is never perfect either. Between that, I started to find that I don't like to completely alter my reality, but I like it to be different enough for people to view my photos and understand that it's okay to take a technically perfect photo, but then make it your own style. The growth is really just about, the transparency on how I edit my photos. Because when I saw photos with my very technical-minded brain at first, and I just couldn't comprehend, how is someone getting these colors at sunset? Like, I never have seen a sunset like that. If the person would have just told me, hey, it's not 100% real, I tweaked the colors, that would have really helped me. Like, that's all I needed to hear at the time. Just, hey, it's not fully real. That would have been really helpful. So I decided that I was gonna be that person to edit something that I thought was visually pleasing, but then right away just tell people this is what it actually looked like.
Not give anyone a false hope.
Yeah, not give anyone false hope that, hey, that photo's really good and very pleasing. I need to get that in my camera. So it's very transparent, showing. At first it just started with before and afters, and people found that really helpful. And then what I found was more helpful was just showing people exactly what I did. because it wasn't as much as just editing the photo, it was really like masking the photo in certain areas. Like there were parts of photos that I didn't even touch and some parts of photos that I heavily manipulated, and being able to transparently tell people like, hey, if you nailed one part of your photo, you don't have to change it. You don't have to change everything. You just have to change the area that you think might need a little bit of work. So being able to show people this transparency was really what allowed a lot of people to believe in the authenticity of my work, because they now saw that I'm not someone that was going to pretend that I was getting these photos straight out of camera. No, definitely not. I don't think anything's original. It's just like at different moments in time it's original, but the concept itself like isn't original. Like no one's gonna be original in like street photography, but the moments that you get in your day are different than someone else's day in the same location. Like one day I actually got the guy going into the car and it looks really sick, because most of the time it's just like this, it's just parked up. Getting like a story of the guy actually going into the car was like an exciting moment for me, because not many people would get that. Like sometimes you could get better comps by like going up these stairs and getting up here and like shooting down or shooting at a different angle. But like on a day like this, I'm really just feeling it out, seeing like the presence of the area. Because if it feels like I can do it, then I will. But most of the time, I'm perfectly safe shooting from the streets, shooting from the sidewalk. It looks exactly the same condition though. It might even be better condition. Like the comp here is objectively more interesting. It's just like, well, what am I gonna do? You know, I don't know. So yeah, when you don't have human subjects in your photo, it's all composition, light, color, and it changes so quickly. I don't want to ever add something that was never here. I'd rather remove something that could, this car could move in 10 minutes and I could get a photo of it without it there. Yeah. But I might not want to wait that long because there's other things to do. But there was never going to be a fake AI classic car there. So yeah, I'm gonna cross quick. I always try to like peek into windows to see if like anyone's peeking out at me. Yeah. The longer I spend in a location, it kind of spooks me out. Yeah, especially when I did Route 66 and I was like photographing people's houses. You just don't feel comfortable if you were at someone's house for too long, because they might just... All right, see, that's enough time for me. But I always start at like the closed one first before going to the one that could suss me out. Yeah, no, I think Todd Heido was like the first one that I saw. I studied his work in college, and I would say at first, you know, naively maybe I looked at his work and thought that all the colors were probably just captured straight out of camera, and they very well could be. But when going out to do my own night photography or captured my own scenes, you know, they just had a very neutral color palette. And I think the first time I realized like, oh, I could play with my white balance and actually get a color scheme very similar to some of his photos. I was like, oh, I could do this on my daytime photos too. I can do this on sunset photos. I can completely alter colors in any photos. I'm shooting in RAW, by the way, you know, like I'd shoot in RAW to be able to make those changes. He was really the person who inspired me the most, I would say. I'd say mostly I would say fine art, just because of the colors. But if I dial the colors back and I bring it for what it really is, I do visit places a lot to capture the change over time. And in that way, I'd say I'm a documentary photographer, capturing like American landscapes and cityscapes. But yeah, I would say fine art is the way I would describe it while I'm building these projects. And then maybe when a project's fully fleshed out, I could say, okay, this is actually a street photography project with some interesting colors and compositions. But for right now, I just say fine art while I'm building up certain pieces and working on certain projects. I think it's just the genre of like everything else. Like landscape photography is very easy to tell, and street photography is quite easy to tell. There's subgenres and there's a lot of mixes and ambiguities. But for me and my work, like I could say documentary, but it's a little unfair to say that when I am, you know, changing the color drastically in my photos. So in that way, I feel like I'm bringing in some kind of other elements, some other artistic styles. And that's kind of why I would say it's more fine art. Like I would say anyone, maybe if someone brought in some like Photoshop, that would be more fine art or compositions and stuff. I like to see the things that aren't permanent in a permanent environment, if that makes sense. Yeah, because things come and go, different animals come in, different buildings get built, but at the end of the day, the grand landscape always prevails. you have to give something the chance to breathe. And there's a lot of areas that I've been going back to, mainly ones that I have access to, the Jersey Shore, New York City, just going back to these and seeing what is being built by humans, what is being broken down by humans. And the way that I was saying before is it's really like a patina on this American human-made landscape that we're creating. And I feel like over the course of time, one season is usually the minimum amount of time for something to take some change. But then even as small as a week could be good, but really I like to do yearly because you could see these big changes and you're just capturing one significant moment at a time. And it's also not too hard on me, giving me the pressure to go to a location every single season to see how it changes. It's given me a little more leeway to just capture it at a healthy pace, but focus on that change over many years. To hit this comp with the gold crest sign, I can never get it. If I put it in like the X-Pan format, like the wide pano, perfect frame, yeah. So I'll crop it for your for your video so they can see the X-Pan look. I always try not to blow up my highlights unless like it's a portrait. So I usually keep it at 0, like for this where it's a little overcast and our highlights and shadows are like pretty close, just keep it at 0. But if it's like very hard contrast, definitely like -0.3, -0.6. Night photography is always like -1 or 2 for me because just because if there's like a neon sign, those are always like super bright. At blue hour, you could actually shoot at 0 and have like the sign and everything be perfect. But if you're not at blue hour and you're in the pitch darkness, then definitely need to underexpose a lot. This looks like a house. Doesn't even look like a hotel. I don't shoot that much film anymore because of the time requirement that it takes for me. I really like to try experimental film now because that's a little more exciting. It kind of gives me that excitement that I need from photography, which is why I actually picked up film photography in the first place. Was it added excitement onto my journey. Like I had 2 years of digital photography, then I had a good 2 to 4 years of hard film photography, and then understanding that that's not really the best workflow for me, and I lost that excitement. I went back to digital to kind of work through some of the processes that I learned through film. I lay down and I think to myself, it would be nice to forget all the content creation and just do photography in the purest form and be happy like I was the first 2 years that I did photography. But then I realized that that's not really, if I took the content creation out of it, that's not a reality I can ever go back to. I think the real reason I had so much interest in those first 2 years was because everything was so new, it was exciting. I was in that flow state, and you just enter that flow state very early in your photography career because everyone has the ability to be creative if you're learning these new techniques, especially from different photographers and different creators. But it's also easy to outgrow those techniques and then enter this kind of, I don't know, this almost depression where you're like, yeah, this plateau is a good word, where you aren't sure what to do because you don't really like one-off photos anymore, and you're really interested in photo projects, but you don't know which one you should do because your life might not be that interesting yet. Then you kind of just take it too seriously and you just don't want to do it. You just wish you could go back to, like I said, those good old days. So I don't think content creation is really the blame for maybe my lack of excitement towards photography like those beginning years. I think it's just in general, like I've grown. I do take it a lot more seriously now. And there are things that I pass driving every day that if it was my first year of photography, I would have pulled over and spent 30 minutes or an hour there. And sometimes I regret driving past and like, maybe I should turn around and try to get that back. But then I know like there's something better. There's projects I'm working on and I'm comfortable with that now. There's so much when it comes to building a business, and so little of it is actually about the photography. But I would never start the business side first before I was a confident photographer, at least an 80% confident photographer. Because there are millions and millions of great photographers, but they don't understand marketing, networking. They have too much ego. If you let that carry into your business, you're never gonna have a successful business. You need to have an open mind. You need to learn about business. Like, you can't just learn about photography and be a successful photography business. You must learn about business to be a successful photography business. The first photo is on this day I was out with the Contax AX. I was just going around New Jersey, photographing local areas, and I was just having a struggle of a day. I was using a 50mm lens, and I love to shoot wide. So I was using a 50mm, and I was just struggling to get compositions. And, you know, I couldn't even see the photos. I just knew they were not good. The last photo of the day, I got to this Victorian house with these purple flowers, and I just couldn't frame anything up right. And I went to take the last picture, and the camera just didn't even fire, just didn't work. And it was just like the peak of my frustration. I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just put the camera away, and I took my iPhone out and just inverted it because I was next to these purple flowers, and I just didn't even look at the screen. I just took a photo out of frustration because I was like, I'm not gonna walk away from the scene after, you know, trying to set up a composition and just not get it. But at the same time, the phone was completely different from what I was using. It was not analog, it was not the right lens and stuff. And I just took a photo using a little bit of intuition, knowing that, okay, the shot's gonna be somewhat good or whatever. And I left the scene, and I eventually got home and, you know, took the photo off my phone, and what I was set out to do that day on film, I was able to do with my phone. I did not realize until that time that my phone is a very capable tool. I was just trying to test out these new cameras, these film stocks, these professional tools to get an interesting look, when the better tool would have been this wider lens, this lens I was used to, because the phone's around 24 to 28mm, which was what I'm used to. So I should have just switched that earlier, knowing like, oh, this isn't gonna work out with a 50. And when I edited that frame and put it online, it did very well. So that definitely influences the decision to say it's a good photo. It just shows that I could have easily not taken that photo, but I did take it, and I did post it, and it did really well. And it just proved to me a lot of things that day, that, you know, it's not always the best tool that you have. It's a tool that works for you. And I learned a lot of life lessons from that one picture. So that's definitely number one. The second photo, that's one of my favorites, is a photo that I took here in Wildwood, New Jersey. It's a film shot that I took on my Pentax 6.7. I came here one day and I was visiting some of the cliche spots that I like to see. And one of them is this blue car that's always parked out in front of the Crystal Springs Hotel. I always come here because it's a good warm-up shot. It takes a lot of ease off the day to just get one nice compositional shot, get into the frame of shooting photographs. But this day that I came here was actually the day that the owner was working on the car and just taking it on its, you know, whatever, how often he moves the car, just to make sure that it's up and running still. And I was able to capture the guy getting into his car. He's wearing like a nice suit, and it's a very timeless photograph. And it added this human element and this motion that I normally don't get in my photos, but it is something that I'd love to add into more photos if it was possible. There's not a lot of times that you get like the owner of the car that you're photographing walking in a perfect outfit at the perfect time. But to get this moment of time really sealed the deal for me, that going back to revisit a location, number one, and number two, visiting these cliche locations, you can get a unique photo. You can get an interesting photo. There's no reason to avoid locations because you think they're cliche, or you think they're photographed a lot, because you can still get something there that's your unique look or a unique moment. So that was definitely life lessons I learned from that. The last photo that is one of my favorites that I ever took was on this drive down from my home in North Jersey down to my, at the time, then apartment in Westchester, Pennsylvania. This drive was actually a pretty nice, nostalgic, vintage type drive. There's a lot of service stations there with classic cars, diners, cafes, neon signs, all on this way down. And for the most part, it's like mostly a highway, but it still has a lot of these stops down. It's almost Route 66-esque in its own way. And so many times when I was traveling from home to my apartment or my apartment to home, I either really wanted to be with my family, so I would just zoom past everything, or I really wanted to just be back in my isolation, in my safe space, and I would zoom back home. And I found it hard with also a lot of my personal stuff in my car to stop and take photos of this area that I always wanted to take photos of. The one day, the light had finally been just perfect on a drive home. And one of the areas I saw was not even of these cafes and these restaurants and these signs that I'd always seen. It was a driveway that had these two classic old station wagon type cars. But for the first time, they were actually just parked up together and they were being hit directly by the sunlight. And I'd never seen this house in this light before. I'd never seen these cars, and I've seen them in the front of the driveway. I never seen them parked in the back like this. And that to me told me that this moment is never gonna happen again. So I turned around after I passed them, pulled over, ran up the hill, and I took a picture of these cars. And it was just an amazing moment. And it's one of my favorite photos because I thought, after I'd taken the photo, I thought, you know, maybe it's not that important. Maybe I could have drove past. But the next 20 times that I drove past that house, they never lined up the same. The light was never the same. So every single time I passed this house again and again, I realized that it was the right choice to just stop, because that moment isn't going to recreate itself. Even though it's the same place, the same two cars are there, the light comes almost the same way every day, that moment just isn't going to line up again. It's a photo that probably won't be recreated. It's one of those ones that's not like, hey, what location is this? What's the pin? Yeah, it's just some guy's backyard. It was just a good moment, and I think me and the people that have seen the photo online have appreciated that, and it's another great lesson that I've learned. Just stop for the photo.